return to the new present in the Blood Omen Alpha has a lot in common with the journey back to the past, in that there's no way to trigger it from normal gameplay, and we're once again relying on the use of the level select to get us there. And we're at the whim of what connections are present to get us through the level. The retail and the alpha diverge again upon the return to the new present in the Nemesis Keep, because while the retail keeps a generally similar layout for all the eras Kain visits, the alpha eschews this and has a totally different layout for the new present, which is nothing like what has been seen before. Perhaps the only room which is appreciably similar is the map room that Kain begins in, and even those with the same room codes are totally different areas, and there are no fewer than 10 totally new areas added for retail, most to match the established layouts in other eras. Most of the areas seen in the alpha are also incredibly dark, and the level as a whole was brightened for later builds.
I found myself once more in the Nosgoth I knew. The carnage from battle was gone. Yet there was something amiss. From the distance, I heard cries, and a breeze from the south carried with it the faint odour of vampire blood.
In the alpha, we begin in the new version of the map room, which was used as a boss room for William in this version, rather than the planar room seen in the retail version. The map room here is missing the side alcove and top door seen in retail, and the room itself seems a little bigger, with these features all gelling with the past era version of that room.
I found myself once more in the Nosgoth I knew. The carnage from battle was gone. Yet there was something amiss. From the distance, I heard cries, and a breeze from the south carried with it the faint odour of vampire blood.
Moving on through the door takes us to a completely different room to the one that might be expected, and we end up in a large plus-shaped room with numerous spike pits, rocks and debris. Doors are evident along several walls, but most are either blocked, inaccessible, or not properly connected, preventing passage through them. Of note in this area is the first contact with the water balloon throwing vampire hunter class, who were cut but present in files in the retail version of the game.
Reputed to have been ripped from the chest of the greatest vampire to have ever existed, Janos Audron, the Heart of Darkness restores vampiric unlife. It can be used over and over again, but always consumes magical energy from the one who uses it. Life is precious, Janos discovered, as it was torn, throbbing and bleeding from his own body.
This area, or rather the code of it, was present in the retail and later versions, but seemed to represent a completely different area. However, the room does bear a passing resemblance to the area before the map room in the retail build, coded 5005, which itself has a similar four-way junction, and it's possible that this was an earlier prototype. The bottom doors on both the left and right forks both lead to different entrances to another new area. This time, a series of square rooms and corridors, with the same ruined appearance, spike pits, and debris as the last. Again, the area is dark and filled with vampire hunters, and again, most of the doors are blocked or unusable. Like the previous tile, this one bears code which was reused for a completely different area, but the room itself does bear a passing resemblance to the next room down the chain in the retail at 5004, and this may be a prototype of that. Only the barely visible door in the bottom right leads onwards. The next room is another succession of ruined rooms bathed in darkness and filled with vampire hunters, spike pits and debris, except this one has a return teleporter pad. The room doesn't seem to resemble any of the other rooms too much, and its code was not reused in the final game. Although most doors were inaccessible, it was possible to use the door in the bottom left, which led to a much brighter area, which essentially consisted of a small balcony and a stairway down to a wider area, with numerous shooters, vampire hunters, and spike pits. At the end, a level was positioned next to a teleporter, which led back to the pad in the previous room. But it's unclear what the level was intended to activate, and ultimately, no new routes open up. This leaves us with no further rooms to explore, and it's actually impossible to properly leave the castle, necessitating a level select warp outside. In the area nearby the castle, we have much the same situation regarding exploration as the past era. Boulders have been rearranged, and the Spirit Forge, although present in files, is not connected. With the second cave on the trail now blocked by trees on one end and boulders on the other, and it's not connected in any case. As with the past era, the clifftop mural and cave are also gone. The retail version will make further changes here, removing the second cave entirely, removing the wood blockage, and even makes changes to the lake area, with the huts gone from the edge of the lake and the lake itself appearing to be receding, exposing the mud beneath. Heading back through Stahlberg and beyond the now collapsed Colossus is much the same as retail, with few changes. And again, as with the past era, no interiors are present and there's no passage to the doll maker. One change to note is the presence of this class as a regular enemy. In retail, only one appears as a champion of Mobius, who is present at Vorador's execution and is represented as the puppet of the present in Mobius's boss encounter. Following the trail south again leads us back to the Stahlberg Rampart, which is greatly expanded in this era. Little is different from the retail version, except the retail has a number of snowy cliffs, as we have seen in other versions of the area. and a few grassy patches on the trail. Entering the building leads us on to one of the game's last tests, the Mobius boss encounter.
The people will not rest until Nosgoth is purged of your kind.
I had been betrayed. In my haste, I had not realized it before. That sigil on his forehead, the Oracle of Nosgoth, was in fact the time streamer Mobius, and I had followed his advice. How much of my quest was of his design? Willendorf? The Battle of the Last Stand? William the Just? Was this the trap he had fashioned for me?
Mobius's boss encounter essentially comprises several copies of the Stahlberg Rampart that each focus on a small active area, and occasionally take features from inactive sections, much like Avernus and the like. 5 copies of the Rampart are used in the battle, 1 for each section. The layout of the Rampart remains pretty consistent between the versions, with only minor changes seen, and most of those concern decorations. So consistently, the retail version features banners and a tower on one side, where the Alpha has only bare walls, presumably in an effort to get the area to match the opening cutscene. The Alpha also has a slightly smaller final encounter area, and takes the first opportunity it can to get rid of the guillotine, where the retail version keeps it there. The retail version tends to close the gates behind Kain, and has an extra trail added over to the left.
The people will not rest until Nosgoth is purged of your kind.
I had been betrayed. In my haste, I had not realized it before. That sigil on his forehead, the Oracle of Nosgoth, was in fact the time streamer Mobius, and I had followed his advice. How much of my quest was of his design? Willendorf? The Battle of the Last Stand? William the Just? Was this the trap he had fashioned for me?
We will send you back to the grave whence you came, vampire. I have seen the future, Kain. You are not Victor! Let us call upon the puppets from the past. From the present.
Bar some minor glitching, the boss encounter with Mobius happens pretty much the same as it does in retail. although an extra version of the final area is added to the retail version for when Kain picks up Mobius's hourglass that's not present in the alpha. Presumably this is to aid loading, as the latter areas in the sequence notably have a hard time loading and suffer slowdown.
And from ages yet to come.
Well done. You have found Mobius's toy. Azimuth, not content with summoning demonic thrall, stole the time-streaming device in order to gather creatures from other...
And from ages yet to come. They victus!
The hourglass of Mobius allowed him to sift through the sands of time, giving him dominion over past and future. The hourglass of Mobius allowed him to sift through the sands of time, giving him dominion over past and future.
Once again though, nothing happens at the end of the fight, and the final door doesn't lead anywhere, necessitating some trickery to get on with the story. Two Mortanius boss doors are found in the level select, but neither is connected, so we have to use some creative wall walking to get to those encounters. Area 510 takes us to the first Mortanius encounter. This lacks the initial cutscene, although the cutscene can be accessed through other means, revealing it uses O Fortuna as an epic soundtrack. The Pillars area here, like the other depictions of the Pillars in the Alpha, has extended grass trails, but no connections to other areas. While Mortanius' minions are active, Mortanius himself isn't, and cannot be killed. Graphical artifacts are also a constant problem in the fight. With no way to win the fight, it's again necessary to use walkarounds to get to the next one, where we can find the Dark Entity fight at 512. This area has the same extended trails that are seen around the Pillars in the Alpha, except without the connections. Again, the fight is incomplete. In retail, the entity rises from the ground. but here he simply moves around in one place before moving to another. The entity is invulnerable, and the entire fight is prone to slowdown and glitches.
The death orb of Mortanius had given the necromancer dominion over the grave. I had thought him the last of the circle, and yet he spoke of another. Before the pillar of death, I lay the orb of Mortanius. The pillar accepted its offering. Thus it was restored. Anakroth's magic was contained within the metal of the scales and would eventually be released back into the pillar from whence it came. The scales of Anakroth I lay before the Pillar of States. The pillar accepted its offering. Thus, it was restored.
Ve Victus! Ve Victus!
Finally, we have the last area, 514, which counts for the final decision. Again, we're looking at the alpha version of the Pillars trail, but with no connections. Except the area is already very glitched, with large patches of bare mud in perfect squares scattered across the tile. Ariel is missing from the centre of the Pillars platform, and instead there are a pair of spinning cards representing the endings. Neither card will do anything once collected, and both can even be collected at once. And that brings us to the end of the Blood Omen Alpha walkthrough. But there's still one more bit of analysis to do. Join us next time as we look into the changed and deleted areas, and those that cannot be visited or found in regular gameplay.